Hi, everybody, and welcome to this origami lesson. Hope you can take a few minutes with me and learn to fold some fun origami models. But before we do that, I'd like to talk to you a little bit about the brief history of origami and where it is today. So, again, we'll just be going over the brief history of origami. So what is origami? I'm sure many of you know that origami is the art of paper folding. And the word itself is actually a portmanteau of two separate words, ori, meaning to fold, and kami, meaning paper. Most people think about origami, they picture something like this, simple figural shapes that show off, little animals. Maybe you folded some of these before, but origami is much more than that, as you can see right here. Oh, and pardon if you can hear the fire truck in the background. It's the perils of living in New York City. As you can see, origami is much more complex than you might have even imagined. Everything you see here, except for the star down here, the bottom center, and the saxophonist up here, is made from a single sheet of paper. So where does origami come from? Most people tend to associate origami with Japan. It actually has its origins in China. Chinese were the first country to develop modern paper as we know it. But the art of paper folding was carried through China, through Korea, and ended up in Japan. And the Japanese were the first culture to use it in more of an artistic form. It was originally used simply for ceremonies, gift wrapping, for weddings, funerals, other events. The earliest known representational origami, that is origami that looks like an actual shape. If you look down here at the bottom center, Meko and Ocho were two butterflies. They were used during Japanese tea ceremonies. And of course, the Japanese came up with arguably the most recognizable origami model in the world, which is the traditional crane, or orizuru. And the oldest known recorded diagrams for origami are actually of the traditional Japanese crane. And you can see here on the right side of the screen, we have an excerpt from the Sembazuru Origata, which showcases different methods of folding the crane. And you can see this page itself shows how to fold a flock of cranes from a single sheet of paper. Most people tend to associate origami with no cutting or gluing. However, traditional Japanese origami encourages cutting. While Japan was developing origami, it traveled from Asia to the West. It was actually used by a few different Western European cultures, particularly Spain and mainland Europe. And you can see some examples of that here. This little bird, the perejita, is a traditional Spanish model. And down here at the bottom right, you can even see it as early as the late 1800s in this illustration. And the gentleman responsible for giving us modern kindergarten as we know it was a German gentleman named Friedrich Froebel. And he encouraged his students to use origami to develop sort of spatial awareness skills and explain basic geometric concepts. But modern origami as we know it today wouldn't have been possible without this gentleman, Akira Yoshizawa, who is known for bringing us a few innovations, notably wet folding. And that's the art of taking wet paper and folding it so that the paper can retain its shape and give it a more sculptural feel. But more importantly, he co-created the modern diagramming system. So if anyone has ever picked up an origami book and tried to learn from that, you're looking at Yoshizawa's system. So basically, this system allows any artist to publish origami instructions, and any other person who knows how to read those symbols, those dash lines, those arrows is able to fold anything. So I can pick up an origami book in Chinese. I can pick one up in Russian, in Hebrew, and I'm able to follow along and figure out how to fold. And Yoshizawa's lifetime, he designed thousands of different models, and these are just a few examples of his origami. A lot of origami prior to this was very simple. It was like that basic figural origami I showed you all the way at the beginning of the presentation. But you can see now that his origami is starting to show more complex forms and shapes. And this is sort of the age of the origami artist. And that brings us to today. Origami has taken off significantly in the last 70 years or so. And there are a lot of great origami artists from all around the world, not just Japan, creating some fabulous stuff. So again, a lot of these shapes here are created from a single sheet of paper, even including this origami bicycle. And all these, like I said, all these artists are from around the world. Origami isn't just used for creating fantastic shapes. It's actually used in science technology. Scientists are using it to figure out how to use it for solar arrays in space, all the way down to the airbags that are in your cars. And even almost at the microscopic level, using it in surgery, using it for stents, and all that great stuff. So there's awesome uses for origami going on today. A little bit about who I am. I work for Tara's Origami Studio. It was founded by this gentleman here, Taro Yaguchi. And we're famous for pioneering the system of origami teaching that breaks down different folds and the different skill levels. And as I teach you today, I'll be pointing out some of these folds and showing you how they all weave together to create the models you'll be learning today. So with that being said, why don't we go ahead and start to learn how to fold some stuff. By the way, I know that I can't hear or see any of you, but if you have any questions as I teach, if you're confused about a certain step, or you just have a general question about origami, please feel free to use the Slack channel. And I'll be taking a look at that as I'm teaching, and I'm happy to answer any questions you have about origami that I didn't cover already. But why don't we go ahead and start folding. So these are some of the models that we'll be learning today. Hopefully everyone has a square sheet of paper at the ready. And the first thing we'll be learning today is this origami sailboat. You'll just need one sheet of paper to get started. So go ahead, get ready, pick out your favorite color, or if you don't have any color paper, that's totally fine too. And we'll go ahead and get started in a few moments. While everyone's getting their paper ready, I'm just going to give a brief little talk about this sailboat right here. Fun fact, it is the symbol of the United States' largest nonprofit origami organization called Origami USA. If anyone has ever been to the Museum of Natural History in New York City during the holidays, there's a giant origami Christmas tree, and that is put on by Origami USA. And like I said, this is their symbol. Already seeing some great stuff in the Slack channel. Someone posted, looks like reams of origami paper, which is fantastic. You're gonna need it. So the paper I'll be using today, we call it simply kami. My paper is gonna be colored on one side, will be white on the opposite side. If you have paper that's the same color on both sides, that's totally fine. However, just pay extra attention to when I tell you to turn the paper over, because that will be important. But for this origami model, we'll be starting with the colored side up, or the dominant color pattern side up. And the very first step that we're gonna do is simply called a diagonal fold. And that's where I'm gonna take one corner of my paper, fold it over and across, so it lines up with the opposite corner. It's always best to use both hands when you fold. Take your time and make sure that your corners and your edges line up before you go ahead and crease your paper. So once I have these corners lined up, I'm gonna go ahead and hold it with one hand. And with my other hand, I'm just going to give it a nice firm crease, starting from the center and going out to the sides. So we already got our first grid question. Is there a base to create some of the most popular origami? Yes, there is. There are actually quite a few very popular bases, and we'll be learning a few of them today. And in fact, we're going to be learning one of them with this model in particular. So what we want to do next is to take our diagonal fold and simply unfold it. So that's the next step. We're just unfolding our first fold, and go ahead and you can flatten it out a little bit. Just like that, until your paper is back into a square. Once you've done that, what we want to do is take our paper and turn it over to the opposite side. Once our paper is flipped over, and again, right, now we're on the opposite side of the paper, so for me, that's my white side. We're going to be doing two, what we call book folds, where we're going to fold our paper edge to edge, unfold it, then edge to edge, and unfolding it again. So here we go. Again, this is called a book fold. Remember, use both hands, line up your edges. Once it's lined up with the book fold, I like to hold the paper still with both hands, and with my thumbs, I can go ahead and give it that crease out from the center. Again, once we finish the first book fold, we're going to unfold our paper and then go ahead and do our second book fold. Remember that origami is not a race. It's all about patience and precision. It's about taking your time and making sure that your creases are nice and neat, because that'll get you a much better looking final origami model. But when you're finished with those two book folds and unfolds, your paper should look like this. And all I want you to do is, when you're done, is to simply rotate your paper just like that. So put it in front of you just like this, where the diagonal crease we had done on the opposite side is now horizontal in front of you. And I'm just going to give everyone a few seconds to get to this step right here. And by the way, like I know I mentioned it before, but if anyone has any trouble with any of these steps, I don't want to leave you behind. Please let me know in the Slack channel, and I'll be happy to go back over a certain step. So once everyone's paper is just like this, we're going to go ahead and actually collapse it into a base. So remember, I think it was Michelle who had asked the question, are there any popular bases? Well, this is one of them. So we're going to be turning our paper with its three creases. We're going to be turning it into what is known as the preliminary base, or the square base. In order to do that, what I want you to do is to grab these two corners right here, the left and the right center, just like this. And you're going to swing these two corners in and down until they touch the bottom corner, just like this. So as you do this, you shouldn't be making any new creases. And what you'll be left with is this shape here. Here's a little 3D view. This giant pocket should be staring and standing straight up off the table. All you have to do to finish this base is to take the top of that pocket and carefully flatten it down, just like that. And this is the finished preliminary base, or square base. Here's a little 3D view of what it looks like. If you let go, the paper likes to open up a little bit. But if you're to hold it flat, it turns into a nice little square, nice little diamond. So if you got that fold, consider yourself one step closer to being an origami master. The next step is going to be quite a bit easier. All we want to do is to reach down to this bottom point here and grab just the top layer of paper. And with this single layer of paper, we're going to go ahead and do a diagonal fold. So we're going to fold it in half, corner to opposite corner. Just this single layer of paper. We're just going to fold it up and back, just like that. And this is what your paper should look like once you're finished. So we just got a new question. What is the best origami paper to use? I'd love to plug my studio and say our origami paper is the best to use. But really, if you go to any craft store and get origami paper, just make sure it's made in Japan. Japanese origami paper tends to be the best. Like I said, it's the nickname for it is Kami, and it usually comes in a 15 centimeter by 15 centimeter size or 6 inches by 6 inches. Getting back to the sailboat, what we want to do next is we want to take this diagonal fold that we just did, this flap here, we want to take this flap and we want to flip it around 360 degrees. So we want to take this flap and we want to unfold it and then tuck it inside this pocket right here. So to do that, all you have to do is just unfold it first, then take that flap and fold it underneath and inside that pocket all the way, and you can use the crease from the diagonal fold to make it nice and easy to tuck it all the way inside, just like that. And this is what your paper should look like right now. So once you finish tucking in that flap on this side of the paper, what I want you to do is to take your paper, flip it over to the opposite side, and then repeat those last two steps. So again, we'll be taking this flap right here. We're going to be folding it again, doing a diagonal fold, fold it up and away in half. Then take that flap, unfold it, and tuck it inside that pocket all the way. And what you should be left with is something that looks like this. When it's oriented here, it looks like two big buck teeth. But if we simply rotate it 180 degrees, you can start to see our sailboat take shape. We have our hull and we have our two sails. So again, I'm just going to give everyone a few seconds to make sure they're at this step right here. So hopefully everyone's sailboat is now looking just like this. What we want to do next is to shape one of our sails. It could be either one, but we're only doing it on one sail. So I'm going to pick this left sail to do it on. What I want to do is to take that sail, fold it all the way down as far as the paper can go. Give it a nice crease. So you can see on my paper, there's a little bit of a gap. The edges don't quite line up, but it's as far over as the paper can go. Once we've folded this sail down, what we want to do next is we want to go ahead and we want to fold up that sail right about here. So in origami, we call this type of a fold a rat fold. Sounds disgusting. It's actually an acronym. It stands for right about there. So your sail might look a little bit different, but the idea with this step, or these two steps rather, is that we've actually pleated this sail. We folded it back and forth to shorten it a little bit. Next, what we want to do is take that pleated sail and we want to go ahead and we want to hide it behind, or rather inside, the rest of the sailboat. So in order to do that, this next step isn't a fold, it's more of a tuck. what you can do is you can take the sail, you can lift it up a little bit, lift up this edge with your other hand, and then you can simply tuck that sail inside of it, just like that. And so now your sailboat should look the same, both front and back. So we got another good question in the Slack chat. What is the tiniest origami creation you ever made? It was so small, I of course have lost it, but I made a origami, the traditional origami crane, which is this one right here. I made that so small it took up a quarter of the space of a dime. I wish I had it on me. All right, so we're almost finished with our sailboat. The final step, what we want to do is to take this bottom point here and fold it up right there to the center of our sailboat. Take that and fold it up, just like that. And your paper should look something like this. Because this crease is so thick, this flap doesn't want to stay flat. But that's actually okay. We want this flap to come out a little bit because this flap is going to act as a kickstand that's going to let your sailboat stand up all by itself. And the last fun thing you can do with the sailboat is if you put it down on your desk or your table and you blow on it from behind, you can get it to sail across the table. Cool. So I hope everyone had fun folding their first origami model. I hope everyone, if everyone wants to take a picture of it, send it over to the Slack channel. I'd love to see it. But going back to the question about tiny origami, the best paper to use for tiny origami, aside from origami paper, is actually receipt paper. Thermal paper is excellent for tiny origami because it's very thin, very strong. So if you ever want to challenge yourself, you can make probably thousands of tiny squares from a CVS receipt if you wanted to. So moving on, I want everyone to take a minute, grab your next sheet of paper, and this origami butterfly is what we'll be doing next. This butterfly is actually of my own design. So you're learning a Taro's original origami design. But like I said, go ahead, grab your next sheet of paper, and we'll be getting started in just a few seconds. All right, so hopefully everyone's grabbed their next sheet of paper for the origami butterfly. This one's going to be quite a bit different than the sailboat we just folded, and just a little bit harder. First thing we want to do is to take our paper with the color or dominant or pattern side face up, and we want to go ahead and do a book fold and unfold. So I'm just going to take my edge, fold it across the opposite edge, and unfold. Just like that, and that is our first step. And nice job, Jennifer. Thanks for sharing that. Same thing, Justin. Love doing it with the post-it note. Post-it notes can be a little bit tricky sometimes because of the adhesive, but it looks like you did just fine. All right. So again, for this butterfly, the first step was just a book fold and unfold. The next step, what we want to do is to take our paper, turn it over to the opposite side. And now we're going to learn a new fold. It's called a cabinet fold in origami. Cabinet fold, it's pretty simple though. We're going to be taking these two opposite edges, and one at a time, we're going to fold them in so that they line up with that center crease. So 1 and 2. I'm just going to rotate this. And of course, this is why it's called a cabinet fold. It's like doors on a cabinet. But this is what your paper should look like once you've finished. Next, what you want to do with your cabinet fold and your paper in general is to pick it up, and you're going to fold it backwards in half until you have a nice long strip of paper. And you can see it's either pleated like, it should be pleated like a W, but it could also be pleated like an M. Just depends on how you look at it. And I see someone just posted to the Slack channel. Looks like they got a little armada going on. I guess it could be a regatta too. Remember everybody, this is what we want our paper to look like right now. I want you to keep holding it in your hands for the next couple of steps. And Robin, I love the little pirate, the pirate sailboat, very cute. For the next step, what we want to do is just to rotate our paper like this. Again, it could be on either side, doesn't matter. And what we want to do next is simply to take our paper and we're going to fold it up in half. So again, we're taking our strip of paper and we're folding it up in half. Like this. So this is what your paper should look like. So Michelle, that's a good question, and you're gonna have to wait and see. That's all I'm gonna say. So again, this is what your paper should look like. What I want everyone to do is to, with one hand, put a finger in between the two layers, sort of splitting the paper into a V, separating the two halves. And the bottom of the V should be this edge right here. What we want to do for this step, again, this is going to be one of those rat folds. There isn't an exact amount to fold up. Just do your best to try to copy what I do. What we want to do is we want to take this edge right here and we want to fold it up about 1 centimeter. And as we fold this edge up, we're going to let the paper behind flip out along with it, just like that. So let me show it to you again, right? Taking this edge, folding it up, and letting the back paper flip out. And then you can go ahead and give that a nice crease. And then here's a side view. This is what the paper looks like once you finish that step. Paper should look something like that. And you can put the paper back down once you're finished. What we want to do next is to take the bottom edge on our pleated strip, so taking this edge here, and we're going to fold it over and up so it lines up with the top edge. So again, take your time, give it a nice firm crease. And once you're finished with the step, this is what we want our paper to look like from a side view. We want it to look like this. It should look like a W. like that. Almost like the Westworld logo, not quite. So once you finish that step and you've checked to make sure the paper looks right, I want you to open your paper up just like this, where you should have this little flap, this little pleat sticking up at the center of your paper. And I also want you to orient your paper so that you see two edges here at the bottom facing towards you. And up here at the top, you should see three edges. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. And if your paper's like mine, the interior should be white. This is very important. So remember, 2 on the bottom, 3 on the top. Of course, if I let go, my paper wants to do that. I'm just keeping it still, just like this. The next step, what we want to do is we want to take each half of the top section here and here, one at a time. We're going to take these halves of these top edges and we're going to fold them over and down diagonally so they line up with the center pleat. So this will be 1. Then I'll take the other half of that top edge and fold it in. Just like that. So this is what you want your paper to look like once you finish with this step. And while I'm waiting for everyone to catch up with that, we had another good question from Michelle. So we already had the tiny question. Now I'm getting hit with what is the largest origami I ever created? The largest origami I ever created was a gigantic sneaker that I could sit inside of. And I also made a matching stiletto. Couldn't sit in that, I would have collapsed it, but the sneaker was flat on the ground, so I could fit inside of it. And that sneaker ended up being about 7 feet long, 4 feet high, and I think 3 feet wide. And our company did that as a promotion for a chain of shopping malls all across the US. So I got to do it a couple of times. And that was using giant 9-foot squares of paper, and the base shape of the sneaker only used 1 sheet. We did cheat a little bit with the details, so there were a couple strips thrown in there. That is the largest origami I ever created. It was a giant shoe. All right, so this is what everyone's paper should look like right now. The next step, what we want to go ahead and do is to unfold. We want to unfold that last step. And I know we just got a new great question in the Slack chat. I just want to go ahead and go over this step before I answer it, because this step is the hardest one in the butterfly. So everybody get your game faces on. Here we go. So this is the step we're going to do twice. We're going to do it on both sides. We'll start off with the left side and then do it on the right side. But starting on the left, what I want everyone to do first is to take the top layer of the 3, and I want you to refold it down along the existing crease line. So again, you're just taking this single layer, you're refolding it. And as you do that, these other layers, the rest of this paper will lift up off the table. It's going to be picked up. The paper is not flat right now. This paper is sticking up straight into the air. What you want to do is go ahead and put your finger in between these 2 layers and carefully open up this pocket right here. So just try to gently open this pocket. We're not creasing the paper yet. Just gently open that pocket and make sure it opens up all the way to this point here at the top center. Just like that. Once you've opened up this pocket, we're going to go ahead and do an asymmetric squash fold. I call it asymmetric because we're not going to simply squash it down evenly. What we want to do is we want to squash it down to the side just like this as far as the paper wants to go. So the squash will stop right here at this corner. Go ahead, give it a big squash. And when you're finished with this step, the paper should look just like this. And remember that this is a step that we're doing twice. So once we've done it first on the left side, go ahead and do it on the right side. Again, we're taking this single flap. We're going to fold that single flap down along the existing crease. We're going to carefully open up this pocket as far as it can go. Just gently open it up. And once that pocket is open, we're going to carefully squash it down as far as it can go, just like this. So this is what your origami butterfly should look like after that step on both sides. And just to make sure if it helps anybody, this is what it looks like from the front, of course. This is what your paper should look like from the back side. It looks just like that. So now that we finished that step, the next question, what is the hardest origami that I've ever made? There are a few very difficult origamis I've made over the years. Personally, I've been doing origami for 25 years, and I haven't been able to hold on to everything that I've folded. A lot of it's been gifted away. But there's actually one sitting right next to me that took me about 12 hours to fold. And I'm just gonna move the butterfly over for a second. It was this horse right here. So this horse was folded from 300, this is about a 300 step horse. Again, 12 hours to fold, single sheet of paper, 19 inches by 19 inches. And in origami, we classify that as super complex. And this horse was designed by the artist Satoshi Kamiya. You might have seen his Pegasus during the little slideshow I had earlier. But if you ever want to give yourself a challenge, or feel like you want to rip up a sheet of paper, go ahead and look up and try to fold some of his stuff. But here we are getting back to the butterfly. So like I said, we just finished doing the hardest step. Everything from here on out is going to be pretty easy. All we want to do next is we want to continue to shape the butterfly. And to do that, we're going to add two folds, one on the left, one on the right. I'm going to be taking these edges right here, and I'm going to fold them over and in. Just like this. So again, we're taking these two edges and we're going to fold them over and up diagonally. We want to make sure that the crease starts here at these two bottom corners, but you'll notice that the crease doesn't go, it's not going to go all the way to this corner here. There's going to be about a centimeter gap, or a gap about this size, I suppose. And this is what we want our paper to look like once we're finished. The next step, what we want to do is we want to take these little horizontal edges on both sides, and we want to fold those over and down so that the little edge lines up with the longer diagonal edge that we made from the previous step. Like that. And like that. Once you do those two little folds, what we want to do here is we want to take these little flaps that we just folded down, and we're simply going to tuck them underneath the bigger flap. Just like that. Next, what we want to do, we want to flip our paper over to the opposite side. And the final step we want to do for our butterfly, we want to take these two inner corners here at the very bottom near the center. We want to take these two corners and we want to fold the paper out and over diagonally as far as it can go. So between here and here. Just like that. And then the very last step that we can do is we want to take the tips of these flaps that we've folded out, and all we want to do is just tuck them underneath these edges right here. We're just going to tuck them so that they can't unfold. Once you finish that, you can flip over your butterfly. And I forgot who asked, but are we making an origami that is kinetic, that can move? And the fun thing about this butterfly is that yes, it can. So if you press down on the center, you can make the butterfly flap its wings just like that. And there you have your second finished origami. This fun little butterfly. And again, if anyone wants to send over any pictures in the Slack channel, show off your work, I'm sure we'd all love to see it. So we're going to be moving on now, going into our final origami model. Go ahead and grab your last sheet of paper. And I want to make sure that we finish on time, so I might go a little bit faster. So if you have any last minute questions, let me know in the Slack now, and I'll talk about it once we're finished. So for our final model, like I said, it's going to be a surprise, but it's going to start off similar to our sailboat, where we want to begin with diagonal folds. We're actually going to do 2 diagonal fold and unfolds. So I want everyone to go ahead and get started. So remember, just diagonal folds and unfolds. And your paper should look like this once you've finished. Thanks, Michelle, for posting the video of that. All right. So once we've done those first 2 folds, what we want to do next is take our paper, turn it over to the opposite side. So for me, it's the white side up. And on this side, we're doing 2 book folds and unfolds. And your paper should look just like this. And again, just in the interest of time, I'll just be going a little faster. So again, we're going to be folding our paper down to create that preliminary base, that square base again, just like we did with the sailboat. So just like we did before, you can take these 2 points here, swivel them in and down, and then carefully squash down and flatten your paper into that square base, just like this. Next, what we want to do is we're going to learn, it's going to be a new type of fold called a kite fold. We want to make sure that our paper is oriented in the correct position though. So make sure that your paper is oriented just like this, where the open part, all these flaps should be facing towards you, and the single close point should be facing away from you. And for this kite fold, what we want to do is we want to take this edge here, and then this edge here, and we want to fold them in so they line up with the center crease. So again, I'm just taking just one edge on the left, and one edge on the right, and folding them in. And this is what your finished kite fold should look like. If everyone can see on my paper, if I lift up these flaps, there's actually a little pocket in there. That's what you want to see. You want to see that pocket. Excuse me. Once we've done this kite fold here, what we want to do next is to take our paper, turn it over to the opposite side. Again, making sure this open section is facing towards us, and do a second kite fold, just like we did the first. So now our paper should look just like this. Should look the same on both sides. And what we want to do next is to take this top triangle and we want to fold it straight down as far as the paper wants to go. So just like this. So again, this is what our paper should look like once we finish that step. What we want to do next is to take this flap here, we want to unfold it, and we want to unfold this kite fold as well until our paper looks just like this. And this next step is also going to be a tricky one. In origami, it's known as a petal fold, P-E-T-A-L, like a flower petal. And to do this, what we want to do is we're going to be using these three creases you can see here. Are going to help us out immensely, particularly this horizontal crease. This horizontal crease is going to act as a hinge during this fold. And in order to do a petal fold, what I want you to do is with one hand, hold down the rest of the paper, and with your other hand, I want you to lift up this flap, this top flap here, and you want to lift it up, like I said, along that horizontal crease. You're going to lift it up and back, and at a certain point, you might need to let go at the bottom and at the top, and you want the two sides to come in and your paper to flatten down into a diamond. And again, this is called a petal fold, and this is what your paper should look like once you've finished. You should have an elongated diamond, and your paper should look just like this. And for this model, we'll be doing the same thing on the back. So you can turn your paper over. Make sure though that you go ahead, you take this triangular flap here at the center, fold it down first. Again, as far as the paper can go. And then just like before, we're going to unfold, unfold, and unfold. And once those three flaps are unfolded, we're going to go ahead, take that top layer, just like before. And go ahead and do that second petal fold. So again, you lift it up, make sure you're lifting it up along the hinge. Let go and carefully squash down. Just like that. So now your paper should look the same on both sides, front and back. And this shape is actually a different type of base. So like I mentioned before at the start, bases and folds can build into new shapes. What we have right here in origami is called a bird base. Fun thing about the bird base, it has these two legs here at the bottom. It's got these two wings here, this hump at the center. And if I take the legs and I move the legs apart, sort of make it flap its wings just like that, which is pretty fun. But what I want everyone to do is just put your bird base down so that the legs are facing towards you. And this next step is also a new one. It's called a minor miracle. And what we're doing it is we're reorienting some of the layers of the paper. So imagine that your paper is an open book. What I want you to do is I want you to turn a page. So I'll be taking the right side here. I'll be grabbing just a single page of this bird base. And I'm going to fold it over from right to left. Just like that. And once I've folded that page over from right to left, I should have 1, 2, 3 edges on the left and a single edge on the right. Next, we're going to take our paper, we're going to turn it over to the opposite side. Once the paper slipped over, now we have a single page on the left and 3 on the right. So to even things out, we're going to take this top page here and we're going to fold it from right to left. And this is the finished step. This is the finished minor miracle. So now before, right, our legs were on the bottom, now they're up here, and now and vice versa for the wings. The wings are now down here at the bottom, but these legs have this hump in the center now. And again, it should look the same on both sides. Next step is pretty fun. What we want to do is we want to slide out these legs to the side. So with one hand, I'll pinch at the center. With my other hand, I'm able to pivot and swing those legs out. I'm going to pivot them out about this far. Again, this is one of those rat folds right about there. You can do a little more or a little less, but you want to do the same on both sides. And again, this is what your paper should look like. Next up, we're going to add a head to one of these legs. I'm going to choose my left side. And to make my head, I'm going to stick my thumb in between these two layers here, like so. And with my index finger, I'm just going to gently push down and flatten the tip of that section. Once that tip is flattened, I'm going to remove my thumb, and then I'm going to carefully pinch and fold the paper back together, creating the head for our origami creature. This type of fold, by the way, is called an inside reverse fold. Now we're almost done, just a couple steps left. What I want you to do now, I'm pretty sure everyone can guess that we're folding a crane, but it's a special type of crane. And the last couple steps, we first need to fold up the wings. So we're taking our wings, we're folding them up as far as we can. And then the last step, what we want to do is we want to fold, take our wings and we want to fold them forward a bit, just like this. so that the tips of the wings are now folded forward. Just like that. Thanks, Peter. Yes, origami can be very relaxing. It's almost like its own form of meditation. So this is what your crane should look like. It looks a little bit different than the traditional crane, which is right here in orange. But the cool thing about this crane is that it can flap its wings. So that's the big twist here. So to get your crane to flap, what you want to do is you want to hold the crane in one hand right where the neck meets the body, right here. Pinch it very firmly. And with your other hand, what you want to do is you want to take the tail and you actually want to pull the tail up and away from the rest of the crane. Just like that. And by the way, so what you don't want to do is you're not moving the tail, you're not pivoting the tail up and down. You actually need to pull it out and away from the rest of the crane. Just like that. And there we go. I know that we went over time just a hair, but once again, just going over everything that we folded today. And if anyone wants to, even after this is over, just upload the pictures of what they folded. I'd love to see them. And thanks so much for joining me for this origami session.